Welcome to the T-roh Show. Transmitting truth one week at a time.
Welcome to the 33rd broadcast of the T-roh Show. This is your host, Keith. You got Stu.
Good afternoon. Hi,
And,
good afternoon.
Tony is, he's off. He's got some personal stuff he's doing, so he won't be in this particular broadcast today. We have a lot to cover this week in the T-roh Show, so get ready. We got some things to talk about. Okay, first of all, we'd like to cover Google. We would like to thank Google for setting up our international relations and being the international liaison between the government of the United States of America and other countries. I'm going to show you why, because what Google did is they came in and they blocked our websites from other countries. That's formal recognition, folks. If there was nothing to block, they wouldn't have done it. So we're getting reports from people overseas that they can't get to our websites because there's a big warning of viruses and all this other stuff. So they became liaisons when they did that. So now they're our partners. So Google is now partnered with the government of the United States of America, believe it or not. That's how that works in international law. And they've given us full recognition as because if there was nothing to block, they wouldn't have blocked it. So
Correct.
It's called recognition, folks. Positive or negative, it works both ways in the real world. Okay, we had a motion last week on giving the Canadian people refugee status, and I think that was sparked from something that Trudeau was doing. I think he was doing some kind of they had made their naturalization or citizenship was Sharia compliant. So that they've fallen under the protection of Islam. That's what's happened.
And we established that. Yeah, and we established that several T-roh shows ago. We talked about Trudeau. I guess he's the prime minister. Is that his label?
Yeah.
Wearing their garb and participating in their prayer ceremonies and such.
Correct. And under the law of nations, the Canadian people are not obligated to fall under that social compact. So now the Canadian people have the ability to change and go their own separate ways without any recourse against them. That's under the law of nations. So since Canada has become or has gone under protection, and they say, well, no, actually Canada is protecting Islam. That's not true. It's the other way around. They're always going to tell you the opposite of what's happening. So now Canada is under the protection of Islam since that particular adhesion contract has been placed in there under the original agreement. The Canadian people are free to leave that status. They were actually freed, by the way. They're no longer subjects of the Queen when the Canadian government did that. And they're under refugee status if and unless they want to start a brand new government over there. So they have the absolute right to do so now. They changed the agreement. So once the agreement's changed in the law of nations, the people are free. So that being the case, is if they do not have a government in place within the next 6 months or a year, the Canadian people themselves, no matter what form of government it is, the government of the United States of America will offer refugee status for them until they can get their government in place. So Trudeau, have a good day, buddy. You're good to go. You've left Canada, and you're no longer a part of Canada at all, or even recognized as being a part of Canada. Alrighty. Today we're going to be going over a particular event that happened this week. And others have read this, but we're going to do a little bit of a twist on it. And the indictments, and this was dealing with Randall Keith Bean and Heather Ann Tucci Giraffe. I believe that's how that is. I'm just going to call her Heather. All right. It says, at all times relevant to this indictment, it said the United States Automobile Association is a financial institution insured by the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation with the home office in San Antonio, Texas. USAA offers products in the insurance, banking, investing, real estate, and retirement arenas. Okay, now these are actually industries right here, so that would be a typo. These are not arenas; they're industries. It says Federal Reserve Bank in New York is a financial institution located in New York, New York. Well, that is a subsidiary of the Bank of New York Mellon. Okay, that's basically the Bank of New York Mellon doing business as the Federal Reserve Bank in New York. Whitney Bank is a FDIC insured financial institution with a home office in Louisiana. That's just a branch member. So it's a private membership association that the Bank of New York Mellon set up, and Whitney Bank is just a member. That's why they call them member FDIC. It's a private membership association. Defendant Randall Keith Bean was a member and account holder at United States Automobile Association. Fair enough. They did their little survey, okay, and creating venue. Now, the defendant, Randall Keith Bean, did not have an account ending in 1135 at the Federal Reserve Bank. All right, let's just out of nowhere, let's pop that in there. All wire transfers discussed herein went through the automated clearinghouse and Fedwire. Heather Ann is not a duly licensed attorney in the states of Tennessee and Washington authorized to represent others in legal matters. Okay, so states of Tennessee and Washington, when you have the lowercase s, this is called a political constituency of the U.S. state of Tennessee and Washington. This is not the original state of Tennessee or the original state of Washington that they're talking about. This is a political constituency. On or around July 7, 2017, Randall and others known as and unknown to the grand jury embarked upon a scheme through which they sought to obtain access funds that did not belong to them by exploiting the online banking options available through USAA. Okay, we know what they did, but just keep that in mind. The scheme involved using a valid routing number ending in blah, 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 which happened to be on the back of this man's Social Security card. So was there any warning on the back of the Social Security card? Stu? I haven't seen a Social Security card in years.
To tell you the truth, I haven't either. But I don't think there's a warning other than that the card belongs to the Social Security Administration.
Okay.
So I guess that is a warning.
Well, okay, all right. We'll go with that for right now. Scheme involved.
Yeah.
Okay, belonging to the Federal Reserve Bank. Did it say that routing number belonged to the Federal Reserve Bank? That's the whole thing.
Yeah, no, I would have to conclude based on my exposure to Social Security cards, no, that's never disclosed.
Okay, and a fictitious bank account number ending in blah, 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 blah. So this was his Social Security number. And now they're calling it a fictitious bank account number. And believe it or not, folks, I don't care either way in this. This doesn't affect us at all. Okay, what we're saying is that we're just going through this indictment. Is there some things that that you should be aware about? Okay, I'll give you an example. You have an adhesion contract. Okay, an adhesion contract means that, say, I've got a widget that I want to sell. A wants to sell to B. Okay, and the widget is just a simple widget and it's going from A to B. Now, and B is going to service the widget. So all of a sudden, you're told that to service the widget is going to cost you $50 a month. Now, C ends up going to B, doesn't go to A that had the widget that is accepting the service, C goes to B and says, hey, I can enhance your service by adding this, 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 and this. So B and C agree to the added services. Then A starts getting a $99 bill every month and can't figure out why. That's called an adhesion contract. Okay? So the point I'm making here is this. The scheme involved using a valid routing number ending in blah, 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 1452 belonging to the Federal Reserve Bank. Now, it's a Social Security Administration card. Am I right? You just said it, Stu, that it belongs to, it has Social Security Administration on the card,
right,
or Social Security number.
Yeah.
So how did the Federal Reserve Bank get involved? So did the Federal Reserve Bank go to the Social Security Administration and say, hey, we want to put our routing number on the back of your card? Did you ever tell Mr. Bean here that this is an adhesion contract, and did you ever tell him what this was about?
I'm sure they didn't disclose any of that.
So they left it up to Randall to try to figure that out, what the adhesion contract is, what this actually means. Okay? Not that I'm on the side of Randall, and nor am I on the side of the Federal Reserve Bank or Social Security Administration. I'm just looking at the facts here. This is what's been put on the internet. Okay? So it was part of a scheme to make numerous attempts using a valid routing number and a fictitious bank account number to purchase jumbo certificates of deposit until transfer was completed. Okay, well, if Mr. Bean did not know what the Federal Reserve Bank adhesion contract was, or the terms and conditions of it, number one, it would have been prudent for him to either try to find out or not use it. You know, just don't mess with it. But obviously, Mr. Bean was not a part of that agreement between the Federal Reserve Bank and the Social Security Administration. So if that's the case, why is it when it says fictitious bank account number, why is it that when people go to PayPal or other institutions or associations like, what was it, the United States Automobile Association, when people go there, why does it show up as a bank account? And the Federal Reserve is actually the bank that services that particular routing number and bank account number. Why is that? It doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, and just to shed a little more light, this is something that some of the folks may not know. You're not, the Social Security number is not you're not required within their commerce. At least their rules and regs, their policies actually state that you should be able to go and open a bank account without a Social Security number. You should be able to go and apply for a job without a Social Security number. Now, we all know that the reality is a lot different than that, but their paperwork, when you delve into it, states that the Social Security number is not to be used for those types of qualifications.
Okay. So it was further part of the scheme to immediately liquidate the CDs and then transfer the proceeds from the CDs to Bean's personal bank account, to purchase assets and pay personal expenses with funds that did not belong to him. What? What do you mean they didn't belong to him? Including the purchase of a 2017 Integra Cornerstone 45B 45-foot diesel motorhome, which, by the way, in my opinion, that was hilarious. Why would he go do that? Why not use it to get somebody out of, if you're going to do that, pay somebody's freaking loan off so they can keep their house, Don't go and buy a freaking diesel motorhome. That's where the problems run in,
Yeah, could be. Or maybe he had a monster scheme going where he was going to go to Mexico or someplace.
Yeah, who knows?
Yeah, who knows?
It was further part of the scheme that Heather purported to be Bean's attorney in order to induce, coerce, and convince certain financial institutions to accept the fraudulently obtained funds for a payment of 2017 Integra Cornerstone 45-foot diesel motorhome. Okay, so there's no telling what was going on there.
Sounds like she vouched for the transaction.
Yeah. Which, by the way, she does have the human right and the intangible property right to the law. So there's no political constituency that has a cornerstone on the law. So just keep that in mind. In the furtherance of the scheme and accomplish the ends thereof, Randall and others known and unknown to grand jury used the following means among others. Okay. Randall was a member of account holder at United States Automobile Association. Okay. Defendant Randall did not hold an account ending in 1135 at the Federal Reserve Bank. Fair enough, but why was it on the back of his card? Or was it his card? That's the whole thing. He may have had a Social Security card. He may have had his person on the Social Security card. But was the Social Security number literally his? Did it actually belong to him? Or did it belong to the Social Security Administration, the same as the routing number belongs to the Federal Reserve Bank? Because that's what they said here.
Ding, 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 ding. Everybody hear that?
Yeah.
That's an important concept.
Okay, so the defendant Randall here obtained from others known and unknown to the grand jury the valid routing number. They keep saying valid because they're trying to keep the Federal Reserve Bank out of this mess. All right, this is called covering your buddy right here. That's why they keep putting the word valid in here. Routing number of Federal Reserve Bank. This is the routing number ending in 1452, and then a bunch of X's here. Okay. Because they wanted to hide the routing number. It's on the back of everybody's card. Why are they putting XXXX1452? It's on the back of everybody's card in that particular district. Duh. So that this is ridiculous here. All right. Says the defendant Randall used his mobile device to access the USAA account. Okay, that's legitimate. No problem there. The defendant Randall would and did conduct electronic financial transactions, including the attempted purchase of a jumbo CDs through USAA, and which the defendant Randall falsely represented the funding source by using a fictitious account number. Well, what do you mean a fictitious account number? It's on his Social Security card. So you're telling me that the account number is fictitious? Or did you not say to people that the account number, or didn't want to tell everybody that the Federal Reserve Bank under an adhesion contract is using that number as an account number? See what I mean? Says the vast majority of CDs of the defendant, Randall, attempted to purchase through the scheme was returned as invalid because there was no valid account number entered. However, 2 CDs were funded by USAA Bank and liquidated by the defendant before USAA could reverse the transaction. Okay, liquidated into what? Money that is not recognized by any sort of constitution. So we are way off in la la land on the left. Okay, we're way out in left field here.
Yeah, definitely. Interesting though. It's very interesting to walk through an indictment here based on the information that we've uncovered and provided to the folks out there. They should be understanding some of the stuff that we're referencing.
Right. Okay. So the defendant Randall would and did use funds fraudulently acquired through the CD purchase scheme to make purchases for his own personal benefit, to include the purchase of a 2017 Integra Cornerstone 45-foot diesel motorhome. Well, it sounds to me like somebody over there in that department wanted this 45-foot diesel motorhome. So they're a little bit jealous. So they said, "Hey, man, I want that one." So they went and took it. Now, there's also this is a good one here, guys. They're called personal benefit. This is called unjust enrichment. They use unjust enrichment in a socialist system. So socialists always use personal benefit, but it's actually unjust enrichment is what they're actually saying. Okay, now it says what did he it would and did use funds fraudulently. Okay, so unjust enrichment is considered fraud. So they really need to start looking at the politicians that do insider trading at the stock market. That's called unjust enrichment and personal benefit, using a not really necessarily a public office. It's just public office on paper to do that. But you notice that they never investigate this guy. Okay, the allegations set forth in paragraphs 1 through 13 are incorporated herein, are referenced to the purpose for the purpose of alleging violations of 18 USC. Okay, 18 USC. In other words, this code right here was never passed by their U.S. Congress at all. That was just signed into as an executive order from an individual that doesn't have any executive power. It says honor about the date set forth below within the Eastern District of Tennessee and elsewhere. Oh, I thought that they were in the state of Tennessee. Now it's the Eastern District. The defendant, Randall, for the purposes of executing and attempting to execute the above described scheme and artifice to defraud, purchased jumbo CDs with funds that did not belong to him by using routing numbers that did not belong to his accounts and fictitious bank accounts, and so did knowingly transmit and cause to be transmitted by means of wire communication and interstate commerce. So they have to grab that, and that's why they did that. They have to show that it was in interstate commerce in order to have jurisdiction in the matter. Signals and sounds, including without limitation the following. Actually, that's misspelled. They should have it to the following. It says
here. This is a list of transactions.
Yeah, he transferred funds that he did not own. Really? Huh. So it must not have been his social security number. It must not have been his routing number. So apparently the card is not his. But every day, and I believe you just mentioned that they ask you for a social security number in order to do anything.
Just about. I mean, put some thought into it. You know, you walk around in that sea of commerce, and you know, bank account, application for this. It's the, you know, in my understanding and my perspective, it's the critical piece of data that introduces that person to their system.
Right, so they can check on their history. I think that's what they call it credit history.
Right, so your credit, exactly. Your credit's tied to it, and a little bit.
All that fun stuff. Okay.
Right.
All right. Okay. And it says the amount of $500,000 was closed and funds in the amount of $499,909.59 were transferred via wire to the Bean's personal accounts in USAA, accounting number ending in 3062. Okay. So it's not his social security number. We know that for sure. It doesn't belong to him. The routing number doesn't belong to him, nor any of the money in that particular account belongs to him. Huh. Sounds like some adhesion contracts were placed in there to where you're issued a social security number that's not yours.
Right, and you're forced to present that, take it or leave it, because if you don't present it, you can't. Yeah, you can't engage in their commerce, which means you can't work, you can't get a bank account, things like that. Yeah.
Huh. Interesting.
So it's the old take it or leave it.
Very interesting. Then he did another one. He said a CD in the amount of $9.99 was closed, and the funds in the amount of $9.98 were transferred via wire to one Bean's personal accounts and USAA account number. Oh, there's some unjust enrichment going on here, folks. We can't have that. All right. Whitney, and it says being transferred the sum of $493, personal account number to Whitney bank accounts belonging to BG, whose identity is known to the grand jury for the purchase of 2017. So he went and bought that was a $500,000 freaking 45-foot diesel motorhome. Geez, man, that thing must have hugged you and squeezed you when you got in there, right? This is all violations.
Yeah, some of those can be nice. Expanding sides and everything.
Yeah, man, $500,000. Wow, that must have been nice. Well, at least we know that Bean has good taste. All right, the allegations contained above paragraphs 1 through 15 are incorporated here in reference to the purpose of alleging a violation of Title 18. Now, the reason why they put this in here is 15 are incorporated. They're doing a chain of title. So they didn't want to make this separate under 1344. So they do a chain of title within the indictment to connect each one. So they use these words. 15 are incorporated herein. They always say incorporated. It says from on or about July 5th, 2017, continuing through the last on or about July 11th in the Eastern District of Tennessee. And they do this because they don't know when it actually happened, and they can't prove the time, date, and place where he thought these things. So they try to do that to give the alleging of an intent. They have to prove intent, so that's why they write it that way. It says, for the purpose of executing the scheme described above, the defendant, Randall, devised a scheme to defraud financial institutions and obtain monies, funds, credits, assets, securities, and other property owned by and under the custody and control of financial institutions by means of false and fraudulent pretenses, representations, and promises executed and attempted to purchase certificates of deposit with money that did not belong to him. Boom, right there, folks. Okay. Devised a scheme to defraud financial institutions to obtain monies, funds, credits, assets, securities, and other property owned by and under the custody and control of financial institutions, which means that money doesn't belong to the people or the account holder. No matter where it came from, it still does not belong to you, no matter which way you go. And we keep telling people, and we knew when this was happening, we were hearing some about it. The committee was hearing about it. The North American National Party was hearing about people putting these things that, hey, all you got to do is go over here and you get free cash and all this stuff. We knew that there was going to be a problem because, number one, we know that Social Security number is not yours. We know that the Federal Reserve thing is not yours. Those routing numbers belong to ABA, which is the American Banking Association, which are privately owned routing numbers that they created. Just like the bank codes, they're privately owned bank codes. They're privately owned this and privately owned that by private membership associations protected under the 1st, 5th, and 14th Amendment of a Constitution that has no executive power.
Yep.
Want me to say that 3 times fast?
Exactly.
Okay, without permission or authority, alter financial instruments. Oh, I'm sorry, you needed permission and authority to alter the financial instruments and liquidate the CDs through financial institutions in order to obtain money and property fraudulently and or defendant's own use and benefit. Unjust enrichment. So the financial institutions are upset because this guy got their money and now they want their money back.
Yeah, he got his hands on their money via their routing numbers and
their
account numbers.
Uh-huh.
And then he spent it on stuff that he wanted, and they're pissed.
They don't like that.
Yep.
And plus, he got a 45-foot, $500,000 motorhome that one of those guys wanted. So best thing to do is throw his butt under the bus, right? Because he doesn't know anything about the adhesion contracts that came in when the Bank of New York Mellon went over to the Social Security Administration and said, hey, we're going to make an adhesion contract with you. We got a deal you can't refuse. Okay. Otherwise we're going to put a horse's head in your bed. And And
That's
then,
it.
yeah, and that's all that happened. So the Social Security Administration is now compromised. And once that agreement is done, nobody has any Social Security numbers because that agreement, that A-B agreement, when C came in and changed it through adhesion contracts, just basically stole all of the Social Security numbers for themselves. So now you don't own it. And this is what we keep trying to tell people. You don't own any of that stuff. It's not yours. It doesn't belong to you, not even the funds. So these guys come out with a private script, religious script, by the way. They hand it out to everybody, and now they're greedy with it. They're so greedy, they won't even share their own money that they can print all day long.
Yeah, because it makes them more money to go after you and throw you in jail.
Right, adhesion contracts, okay? Get it, folks, what we're trying to tell you? The Social Security number, the routing number, everything to do with that system have adhesion contracts for one thing and one thing only: jail time. That's the ultimate goal, to get you put in jail. That's what it's about.
Right, because you look at it this way, you say, okay, well, why does the New World Order petrify people? Well, it's because it's a clampdown. It's a control, in your face control mechanism. But the reality is, what's even more controlling? A jail cell. And that's what America is, right? We've done a report on that.
The Social Security number, the Federal Reserve note, the banking institutions, all these things are a vehicle to get your body into a jail cell. That's all it is.
Right. And they continually make rules and regs, 5-year increments, decade increments, to make it more and more difficult to use those Federal Reserve notes correctly.
Right. So what's the difference? What's the difference between what we're reading here, okay, and the railroads that took the Jews over to the camps? What's the difference? There is no difference, because that's the vehicle. Because in the past, folks, these financial institutions, they were at one time railroad cars. They all belong to the railroad. So that's why they used to rob the trains, because those were rolling banks. And what they did is they established these institutions, and those are nothing more than a railroad car that has been placed into a building. So you have the 9 baron families that run the railroads in this country, and they created this whole monopoly to get you into a camp or a jail. That's all this is about. It's just slavery. It's all it is. That's why they have Title 42, Section 666, okay, which requires you to have a Social Security number, a brand. It's all on paper, but that's what they're doing. And now they're coming out with a chip, and the chip is nothing more than a brand to brand you as cattle. That's all it is. Nothing more to it. The allegations contained above in the paragraphs 1 through 17 are incorporated herein. Gee, you see what it is? Chain of title, okay, of this particular document, for the purpose of alleging conspiracy to commit money laundering in violation of 1956. They always go to money laundering. That's always that's the catch-all. Money laundering. The grand jury further charged that in and on or about July 17th, or July 2017, in the Eastern District of Tennessee and elsewhere, this is a Eastern District of Tennessee. That's actually a railroad district. The defendants, Randall and Heather, did unlawfully and knowingly combine, conspire, confederate. Oh, this is now they're bringing in confederations. And agree with each other and other persons known and unknown to the grand jury to commit certain offenses against the United States in violation of Title 18, United States Code, blah, 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 blah. Okay? Just nothing more than another vehicle. That's all it is. Just this is a railroad car. So look at this section, this right here, as a railroad car. And then you understand indictments. You'll understand what's going on. This is a railroad car. Think of this as a train. Knowingly conducting and attempting to conduct financial transactions. Now, the reason why I say this, so Title 18, okay, if the U.S. Congress never passed this, which they didn't, that was well proven years ago. I think it was back in 2009 it was proven. Then Congress can't see it. If the U.S. Congress can't see it, they can't go in and fix it. That's called black market, okay? Knowingly conducting and attempting to conduct financial transactions affecting interstate commerce. There you go. They got to get you back to interstate commerce again, okay? Which transactions involve the proceeds of specific unlawful activity, that is wire fraud, bank fraud, in violation of 18, and in violation of this car, with the intent to promote and carrying on a specific unlawful activity, that is bank and wire fraud. And that while conducting such financial transactions knew that the property involved in the financial transactions represented the proceeds from some form of unlawful activity. So now they, remember I told you they had to go to intent? That's why they said on or about, okay? But he has to specify the time, date when he thought that it was unlawful activity. But they can never do that with Bean and the other lady, I can't remember her name now. I think it's Lucci. So they have to go in and they have to. This is called. We hope this sticks. This is a dirty diaper they threw against the wall and they're hoping it sticks. Okay. Knowingly attempting to conduct financial transactions affecting interstate commerce, which involve the proceeds of specific unlawful activity. So, if Bean was in interstate commerce, apparently there's a law against Bean being in interstate commerce. He came out of his domestic capacity and entered into interstate commerce where he was not allowed. So this is alleging a trespass. That's what they're saying, which involved the proceeds of specific unlawful activity and wire fraud in violation of 18 USC. That's another rail car. Bank fraud in violation of 18 USC 1344. That's another railroad car. Knowing that the transactions were designed in whole or part to conceal and disguise the nature, location, source, ownership, control the proceeds of specific unlawful activity, and while conducting and attempting to conduct such financial transactions. Well, see, Bean thought, and I know what he thought. I never even talked to the guy. I don't even know, but I know what the everybody's talking about on the internet. He thought it was his trust. And so does everybody else, because that's what was put out on the internet and videos, that it was his trust. So why don't we find the source of the people that made the video, where it literally came from? Where was that source, guys? See, government of the United States of America is in interstate commerce. We know what's going on here. So who let out the information that there was a hidden trust in Social Security? Who let that out? It went on all kinds of stations all across the internet and all across YouTube. Who let that initial information out and said that it was his account and his trust account, which obviously here it's not.
Probably the people that benefit most from arresting people and tossing them in jail.
Right.
But I'm only guessing.
Yeah, we just don't know, It's just over my head. I don't understand it. All right, that the property involved in financial transactions represented the proceeds of some form of unlawful activity. Okay? Now, knowingly engaging, how did he know that? Now we got a psychic. Okay, now we're involved in what we call a crystal ball. So did they go to a medium, and did the medium say he knew that? He knew what he was doing? We must have. Either that or the people that wrote this are psychic and they know what everybody's thinking. So what am I thinking right now? I just want to know, So we'll just do the timestamp here on this and say, okay, what was I thinking right now? I just want to know if they know that. It'd be kind of cool to see. I'll give them $1 or $5, something that they tell me is right. Knowingly engaging and attempting to engage in monetary transactions. Oh, now we're involved in monetary transactions. Through a financial institution affecting interstate commerce and criminally derived property of a value greater than $10,000. Because you know, folks, you can't have any more than $10,000. Otherwise, you're out of domestic. You got out of your cage, can't have it. Nothing over $10,000. Now, what they're alleging there, folks, right there is terrorist activity. So they just jumped into the what was that? Anti-money laundering. That's what they're doing. They're setting him up for an anti-money laundering thing under terrorism. This kicks in the FDIC laws. The FDIC is attached to that policy. So that's what they're doing there. So this is just a money grab. So such property have been deriving from specific unlawful activity, wire fraud, 18 USC, bank fraud, blah, blah, blah. So now we're going to get all the vehicles in one thing. So they switched from one area over to terrorism and then brought all of the railroad cars into line to move and transfer him over to a jail. Get it? See how I did that? Pretty cool how they do it, huh?
Way cool.
So they got terrorism. So they moved over from bank fraud to terrorism and then lined up all the railroad cars. All right, the allegations containing counts 1 through 7 in this indictment are hereby re-alleging. Now we're going to re-allege now and incorporate herein by reference for purpose of alleging forfeitures pursuant to, now we're down to civil forfeiture. The wonderful job of the, what was that called? The equestrian order working on behalf of the Pope. Okay, so now we're into forfeitures. That's called civil forfeiture. That's what the Pope does. Upon conviction of any offense of the violation, blah, 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 we can just cut all that out. That's all just garbage. So the personal money judgment, that in other words, what I'm saying by garbage is, this is selling the terrorism. Okay, that's all this is. The forfeiture allegation section is selling the terrorism thing. He was involved in terrorism. Okay, now, upon conviction of the offense of violation of 18 USC, the defendant so convicted shall forfeit the United States of America to the United States of America. This is a conglomerate of 50 political constituencies. So now he's under political crimes. The political crimes involve the terrorism. So what they're saying is that when he opened those accounts, he was involved in terrorism to change the political structure of the country. That's what that means. Any property, real or personal, involved in such offense, and any property traceable to such property, including but not limited to the following property. Okay.
Right. And so what's the property that's been referenced?
They want that motorhome, bro.
Exactly. Big ass motorhome.
That's what they want. They want that motorhome. So man, that's free. Yep. That's free right now. They can either sell it or somebody, one of the agents will take it on vacation. They're going to use it. Don't worry. Pursuant to Title 21, because we know that the Vatican City is such an honest country. The defendant shall forfeit substitute property upon the value of the property subject to forfeiture. If any act or omission of any defendant said property or any portion thereof. Now you notice they're talking about the property. Okay, so now what they're doing is they're accusing the motorhome of violating all these acts. That's how they're doing that. So the motorhome is now being indicted. And then this is how they do it. If any act or omission of any defendant said property or any portion thereof cannot be located upon the exercise of due diligence, has been transferred, sold, or deposited with a third party, so they want to make sure they get it under civil forfeiture.
Yeah, that's basically giving them permission to hunt the thing down at their leisure and grab it.
And guess who's going to take the loss?
Mm-hmm.
The people that made the motorhome.
Yeah.
Because they're not going to go back to those people and pay them $500,000 for that motorhome. There's no way.
No.
that they're going to do that. So this is a way that the Equestrian Order and the Jesuits and all them, this is how they this is how they steal right in front of you. You just don't. They just put it in language you're not getting. It's a foreign language. And
Yeah,
then they
but the transaction is basically that. They've given themselves permission to hunt the thing down at their leisure. They'll eventually find it. They'll grab it, repo it, whatever word you want to use, and everybody else is left holding the obligation.
Yeah.
And they walk away with the king of the camper in this case.
Right. The banking institutions, they can claim on the insurance and everything, and the ones that actually produce the camper or the motorhome, the ones that actually all their suppliers, everything, they take the loss. And then what do they say? Oh, well, you just need to go to the insurance company. Well, they already sold it. Why would they have it insured? It wasn't theirs to insure anymore. That's only if it applies on their lot. So
yep. And if he happened to sell it, if what's his name? Ronald? What's the defendant's name?
Randall?
If the defendant happened to sell the thing before he's caught up with, then the buyer is potentially going to be left holding the bag also, as it says right there in B, transferred, sold to, deposited with a third party.
And that also is if you transferred it to a trust, they want to make sure that they can get a hold of the trust. Mm-hmm. And then the United States shall be entitled. Okay, now we're involved in entitlements to forfeiture, substitute property pursuant. Okay, now here's my question. Did the United States of America actually own it? Anything in this transaction and anywhere? That's the thing. It's just a political constituency. So was this owned by a political party? That's my question on that. So it's the only question that's not being answered here. And I'll bet you anybody that if they in fact had a grand jury, which 9 times out of 10 they don't, they just write it on the paper that says they had one. Would anybody ask, well, did the political party, meaning the Democrats or Republicans, literally own that vehicle? Do they own all the commerce in the country?
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't think a convened grand jury is going to be, made up of American society members is going to be capable of asking that question. Sadly. Right.
And you better, say that this is a true bill. Truly it is. Yes, it's a true bill. So anyways, folks, what are we getting at? What we're getting at here is this. If you're using private script that's not recognized by any form of constitution anywhere in the world, you're going to run into this, and this fuels this type of activity, having a private script not recognized anywhere. That's why they got rid of a national currency all across the world, so that they could forfeit and take what they wanted when they wanted it and make it look really official.
Yeah, and do we need to walk through that for 2 or 3 minutes, the black market concept of the American society?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so you've in theory you've got a constitution that says gold and silver is how you conduct business. They take away the gold and silver, and they force upon the people Federal Reserve notes, this private script. So now you're using basically a company's paperwork to conduct transactions. That right there, because it's not recognized by the Constitution, you're now a lawbreaker. You're engaged in black market activity by virtue of carrying the stuff around in your pocket, let alone conducting transactions with it. So you're a criminal basically when you wake up in the morning. They turn around and they can hammer you and pile on statute after statute after statute, amendments, etc., forever. They can do this forever because you're a criminal. That's what we're talking about.
simply by using their private script. You're a criminal.
Yep.
Now,
Yep.
if you use the continental dollar, well, there are no adhesion contracts. That's national currency. It belongs to the country, and it belongs to the people of the country. That's your money. So you can't criminalize that. That's why we keep saying bring in a national currency, which we did, and start using the national currency, because there are thousands upon thousands upon thousands of adhesion contracts attached to everything in that system. So people say, well, what's the benefit of using your currency, of using your money, the national currency? Oh, I don't know, 20 to 60 years in jail. In other words, you forfeit 20 to 60 years in jail. And by the way, folks, these two, they're done. Lucci and Vinny, they're gone, bro.
Yeah, I mean, I think he did I wanted to make sure we covered that. I think he did a pretty fair job poking holes in the indictment itself. But the reality is that those two defendants they're in big trouble. They're in a world of hurt, because ultimately they're black market participants, and they're going to throw the book at these guys. And because
there's no legitimate government can help them, because they were involved in black market.
Yep, that's it. And that's a harsh reality. But you got to let that sink in, because that's the current situation. It's incredible, but
it's bad.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay, people have said, well, the continental dollar isn't worth a penny. You know, it's not worth anything. It's all crap and everything else. Well, that was a setup, folks. And this is how they set up, by the same people that brought in your precious United States Constitution. They went after it in 1851. This is how they did it. It says here were these bills of credit to be redeemed, and this is, by the way, from a Ohio Convention debates. This is Thursday, February 6, 1851. So we didn't just, throw this out there. It says bills of credit to be redeemed by the general government. It had no means to redeem but by taxation, and it had no power to compel a state to pay its quota of taxes. Okay, what do you mean by redeem? Who gave a government the power to redeem something? That was made up. All the general government could do was to request each state to raise by taxation its share of the debt. What debt? United States under the old Confederation. The United States right here was never under the old Confederation, because that was not the name of the country. This didn't exist as a country at the time. And now it's restricted to the bank, or to the Bank of New York Mellon on Manhattan Island, and the jurisdiction, the District of Columbia. That's as far as they can go. They had no business, could only act upon sovereign states and not upon the individuals of each state. There was no such thing. This was completely made up. Okay? So the request was again and again made, but the states provided no means to redeem this paper. They were wholly unable to do so. Well, there was they completely created this whole thing out of thin air of redemption. That's so that the monarchs could get in. That's what they were trying to do through their Bank of New York Mellon. The Netherlands was trying to get into your banking system again, and they eventually did. And when they did, they took everybody's global account, your trustee status, to the Most High, Yahweh in heaven. Once again, doing the same thing over and over again. They repudiated the whole debt. They could. They could not redeem even their own bills of credit. It wasn't theirs to redeem. It belonged to the people. Some states made the attempt to pay their share of the taxes, but issuing new bills of credit on the faith of the state, because that's what they were given in the first place. That's what the bankers were trying to give them, and then they were trying to get free cash sent to them, to the bankers. Oh, they couldn't redeem it. They couldn't give us free crap. So they said, okay, here's a bill of credit. The same thing you gave us, a bill of credit. And it says by some states may attempt to pay their share about issuing new bills of credit on the faith of the state. You got it, because that's all they were given, and making them a tender in payment of taxes. But this increased the evil. Oh, it's such an evil. Yeah, and increased the evil because the individuals that were committing the evil were trying to get something for nothing from the states. The result of the whole matter was that the citizen of a state who were themselves holding these bills, because that's who it belonged to, consented to be taxed to pay them. They were but taxing themselves to pay in many instances. No, they were not. What they were doing is they went and got a line of credit from the bank through using their own global account. They went and built whatever they were going to build. They paid everybody to go off and which means that it was honestly earned. They would go pay somebody else for services, the people that built it, and then they would pay their own back to make sure that everybody was actually paid and everything was back. That's all. It was labor-backed currency. That's all it was. It says the debt due themselves, and if this cuts out. See, this cuts out the Most High, because it was actually borrowed from him. The grantor and beneficiary is borrowed from the beneficiary, so they lied here on the debt due themselves. And if to pay the debt due to another, they felt neither able nor willing. They didn't. That's BS, by the way, because they did pay them, and then they were paying back the Most High. They were obligated to their faith and their honor. They were obligated to that, not the socialist communist way of saying you're obligated to the state. So the socialists and communists came in here, and they were trying to get rid of, they were trying to bring the state in to a religious form, trying to establish a religion. That's all it was. The faith of each state of the Union had been forfeited. Their solemnly pledged faith had been violated. No, it wasn't. And the holders of their bills of credit injured or ruined. Was not. They were in everybody's hands wholly valueless. Not true. None of that was true, because they made it that way. Because they started trying to claim gold back for their bills of credit. That's what the private bankers were doing. It's the Bank of New York Mellon that was coming in here and screwing up the states. The Bank of New York Mellon was coming in, and they were claiming gold. Well, we want gold back. Why? You just did a bill of credit. You emitted a bill of credit, which was private, and now you want gold back? The hell's the matter with you? You're supposed to just get service fees, and that's it. That's how a bank goes from nothing to 28 trillion in assets. It's called grand theft. Okay, they were everybody's hands. The toil of years was lost. No, they weren't. There was no remedy. Yes, there was. Stop trying to get something for nothing. That was the remedy. Stop stealing, you have no problem. So a banker comes out and then he says, okay, we're going to emit a bill of credit using your global account. If the guy was honest, and he was, or the woman was honest, and they really had the people's interest at heart, they would be nothing more than a servicer getting service fees for servicing an account of money that they had, that the money's not theirs, the bill of credit wasn't theirs, nothing else was theirs.
Right. So in essence, you'd be paying them for facilitating the transaction and then keeping your books for you.
Third-party agent.
Yep.
That's it.
And there's a fee that can be charged on that legitimately, because that's labor.
Yeah, but you're not going to be, starting out in a mobile home and then 6 months later into a gargantuan building. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're not going to get rich on it, and but it's a good solemn service to the people. Yeah. That
you're part of the community.
Yeah, you're part of it, and that's what you do. You're the banker guy.
Yep.
And you handle everything, and you're always going to need an accountant. That's where an accountant comes in. They're glorified accountants. That's what bankers.
Right. Are. Yeah. That's exactly.
And they make sure, okay, because the qualification for a lodium title or a lodial title, if you want to call it that, to property is a deed and a promissory note that has been satisfied. Those two documents together constitute a allodial title, especially if you use your global account to do that. A global account is nothing more than your access to your human, right access to the resources of the world of which you were born into, which you have dominion over. That's all it is.
Right. So in a very practical way, if things were running correctly, what you do is, let's say you wanted to buy a house, you go, and the local community bank would facilitate the transaction, not control it, but facilitate it. You'd purchase the thing. They'd keep the books on your repayment, and they'd help generate the deed upon payment in full. And that's it. see the difference between a service based on that type of currency and what you have now, where you're a criminal, where you have to supply gobs and gobs of paperwork, you have to do quarterly reports, et cetera, et cetera. It's just crazy. I mean, it's so dramatic, the difference. In one scenario, they're basically an asset to you and your goals. And in the other, they're clearly an adversary. Or you're the enemy of the state, so to speak.
Yeah, it's really sad, because the main goal here is to find out who put out the information that you have a private trust account in the Federal Reserve and Social Security Administration. Who put that out? And who made it available on PayPal and other, not that PayPal is any fault here. Who did that to their system? Because we know for a fact that they didn't. And we know for a fact that a lot of these other, like Automobile Association, they didn't do it. So who's that service available to? That's the whole thing. Whose money is that? Those funds that they took that were in what they thought was their Social Security account, who actually owned that money? What, Democratic, Republican Party? Who actually owned it? That's the whole thing. The same guys that are making millions off of the stock market, is that who owns it? Is it their money? Obviously doesn't belong to these people. Obviously that account doesn't belong to these people. So why are they forced to use it everywhere they go? Why do the political parties force them to use those numbers and actually put it under Title 42, Section 666? Why would they do that? Where they have to have it. So, who's the sinister Luciferian organization here behind all this and doing all of it? And I'm not saying that Bean or Lucci is guilty or not guilty. That's neither here nor there. They're done anyways. Doesn't matter whether they're guilty or not guilty. They just fell into a trap that was set for them.
Right, and that's the reality. It has nothing to do with right or wrong. It has nothing to do with lawful, unlawful. It has everything to do with they walked into a trap that's out there perpetually, and it's almost perfect in design, and they're not going to be able to escape it.
And we know that the judge they're about to go before is under the Charter of the Judges. That was issued by the charter was issued by an association that was wholly owned by the Equestrian Order of the Holy Sepulchre over in Italy, a completely separate city-state that's pretty much unknown to many people until the t-roh show made people aware of it, on what was going on, and other outlets. There's a guy over in Italy, which I'm surprised he's still alive. Has been exposing them to what they're doing. So, bottom line, folks, use the Continental Dollar, continentalpublicbank.com. The money is being generated there every day. and it's real national currency. It doesn't land you in jail for 20 to 60 years. There's no adhesion contracts. There's no nothing. It's your money. You do what you want with it. That's the bottom line. That's what we talk about, and this is why you have to have a national currency. This national currency does not allow for foreign countries to come in and start throwing other people in jail where they have no jurisdiction. That's what they call in international world and the law of nations a whore. The international character of the Federal Reserve note is it's a whore. It allows everybody to come in and take advantage and use it. There's no meets and bounds on it because it's not recognized by anything. Thank you for listening to the T-roh Show. You got anything else, Stu?
No, I was going to say, and that's a good place to end this. That's exactly what I was going to say. Yep.
Okay. Thank you for listening to the T-roh Show. We do, please remember to subscribe, and we do appreciate all the subscribers that come in. We do get plenty per week, and they keep growing on a weekly basis, and we do appreciate it. We do appreciate the excitement of people listening to the T-roh Show. We do appreciate everybody coming in and giving us some positive feedback on it. And yes, we have been working on the volume. So thanks for listening. We'll see you next week. Say goodbye, Stu.
Bye-bye. Talk to you next week.